All right, let's move into the questions, okay? Don't get nervous, everyone, okay? It's all easy, simple questions here. Just speak from the heart, okay? Um, but I want to go back to our first panelist, to Annette. And Annette, um, the question for you is, what resources were needed in order for you to carry out this project?
So it didn't take a whole lot of money or anything like that, right? So we had some snacks. Like I said, we used the work experience program as kind of the incentive, so them getting paid. But so we made copies of some of the worksheets for them to work off of. We also did a Google form where they could type in their responses there, so we could collect things easier and kind of put those things together. But outside of that, it really didn't take anything else other than that for us to facilitate those classes.
Okay, which is great to know, everyone. Again, that right? Because you know, many of us are limited in resources, whether it's funding, time, et cetera, and so forth. So that's actually, great to know here as well. Um, for the rest of the panelists, would anyone like to share what resources were needed from your standpoint? And I'm looking at you, Cynthia, because you're at a traditional community college and so forth. So, um,
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about some of the resources. So for my classes, it was all through the instruction side, right? I get paid as an instructor, but I would say the unspoken resource is the self-will, having the ganas, right, to try and pursue this and to think creatively and critically about what we're doing and how are the students taking this in? Does it make sense to them? And then going back and either editing again or continuing the conversation. So love labor, unspoken love labor. And then on the career side, the workshop that we're creating with Fritzy as a team, it's just counseling hours. So it's embedded as part of our role. And capitalizing on the relationships that the Career Center has with leaders across campus within our equity programs to try and recruit students and make it a welcoming space. So it doesn't take a lot, but for sure that having the will, the ganas to pursue something and the passion to see it through and ensure that students are walking away with something.
thank you, Cynthia. Definitely that will, that, or as you said in Spanish, las ganas. Okay, thank you. Jenny, I want to come to you because you're working again with the Vietnamese population. You mentioned, English as a second language, the language barrier and so forth. Um, Share with us maybe some potential challenges, maybe initially to utilize this program with English language, learners with the Vietnamese population. If there were any, challenges that you could share with us and how you overcame maybe some of those language barriers.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we had to do a lot of scaffolding. We had to do a lot of explanation to the students. So I initially worked with my colleagues who speak Vietnamese. We have instructors who speak Vietnamese, and we have program coordinators and managers who speak Vietnamese. So I utilized all of their skills and abilities because they also have one-on-one firsthand experience with the students. Specifically my instructors who teach in the classes. So I used my instructors to explain the concept to the students, because not only is this a new concept for us, but it's a new concept for them. They probably, some of my students had never thought about a career, some of them had careers in Vietnam, but the pathway to that career was different than it would be here. So when they come here, some of my students are kindergarten teachers in Vietnam. Some of them were photographers. Some of them had their own businesses. And they come here and they work in nail salons, restaurants, and factories as assemblers. cleaners, janitors. So how can they go from, you know, their careers in Vietnam to, you know, starting from the bottom basically when they get here, and how can they build themselves back up? So we worked, the challenges were obviously number one was the language barrier, but I was able to overcome that with the complete help from my colleagues who have their own personal career stories, right? So they came from Vietnam as well. So they have their own stories, and when they got here, how they overcame their own personal obstacles and rose to success, you know, where they are now. So they were able to relate their stories to the student stories. So that helped a lot. Again, working with counselors in the area, Coastline, Orange Coast, Golden West, they also serve Vietnamese population. So they were able to help me in terms of transitioning, like in terms of talking about transitioning our students to their programs. They come here and they do presentations. They have a colleague who speaks Vietnamese come here and talk to our students in Vietnamese. So the main challenges would be first explaining why, like Angel was talking about why, what is the why? First of all, not just their why, not just the students' why, but the why for this project, right? We have to get the buy-in, we have to get the incentive, the motivation from the students about why this can be important for them. So doing that in English and then doing it in Vietnamese, and then like contextualizing it to their actual, you know, everyday lives. That was the biggest challenge. And we're still learning now how to overcome that. We're still creating their, you know, career narratives, and because we have to first explain what their goals are. So I would say that we've been able to overcome all the challenges so far by collaboration, communication, and contextualization.
Mm,
3 C's, right? I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that a lot lately, like trying to put stuff in a box, like just, you know, make steps so that it's clearer for, you know, administration, faculty, staff, to the students, right? Because everyone is involved in this.
You know, Jody, what you mentioned, you reminded me of how when we kicked off this today's session about the quote that I had about Steve Jobs, how it's a powerful quote, but you have to contextualize it to the audience and groups. And same thing, this program, you know, the foundation remains the same, but the examples and then how you contextualize it, from what I'm hearing from you, is where it was a challenge, but you were able to overcome those challenges to really make it relevant to the students, the demographics, that cohort that you serve. So thank you, Jody. Paolo and Rachel, I want to come to you, and because, so from my understanding, you have the ability to work with a variety of student groups, but you chose veterans. And obviously, as you can see from the comments, you did a phenomenal job sharing your project here. People love what you did. Why veterans?
Go
So
ahead.
because they underscore themselves the most, not the most, but we have the student traffic at Coastline. So again, Coastline's very unique as we have 4 campuses, and we're mostly on 90% online, and we have a veteran center that's housed where our student services are. So there's already that community built in, and understanding veterans and their experience within our counseling walls, how they underscore themselves, how even the word like student can be triggering to them, because it's starting over, it's not honoring their past experience. So we felt it was a great group that needed some love and empowerment. And when we talk about resources, the stars just aligned. We had thought of this population, and then happenstance, there was an upcoming event to promote it, tailored to veterans. So we really utilized all of our resources.
And you said something about how the word student is a trigger, or can be a trigger to veterans. I never thought of it, but I think it's so important, right, everyone, for us to certainly understand the group of students we're working with, because we all have trigger words. They're all things that trigger. And so yeah, that is awesome. Okay. All right. Pablo, is there anything that you wanted to add or share?
Yeah, it was Rachel's idea for veterans. So thank you, Rachel, for that wonderful idea. And also the profiles was also Rachel's idea to like post it on the wall. I'm like, that's a great idea. My first instinct was like Canva. And I'm not really a creative person, believe it or not. Canva did all the creativity. I just plug everything in. And I'm like, this came out really nice. So it was awesome. And yeah, so Rachel mentioned we had an upcoming event. Also, for those that have taken like veterans training, military like vet training, where the transition on one of the difficulty for life transition for that population is, well, first of all, the transition is already difficult enough, going from a super structured to an unstructured many times, or like and with the with that familial structure military to like sometimes no structure in that way, it's difficult. And also one challenge is also translating their military skills, like because typically when you're military you have an occupation. So being able to translate that to civilian skills is it's difficult to draw from that. One of the first, when we were brainstorming, one thing that we taught, one thing that we also used ChatGPT was like translating that as well. Because I know working with our VRC coordinator, he keeps emphasizing that when I met with him over time. So I'm like, hey, why don't we leverage AI to kind of draw that out and also tie that in with the career narratives? And it was just like it just fit perfectly well. So, and they also have money. So realistically, I know that there's no like incentive involved. Students are just less likely to come. So with all those pieces, we felt like the cosign veterans were who we chose, and it worked out really well.
Yes, no, it definitely did. Well, thank you, Rachel, thank you, Paulo. Uncle, with you, what stands out in my mind is again working with the student population where there's been a gap, right, and sometimes maybe a long gap. Any challenges in that you, when working with like Yolanda or some of the students, in terms of like getting the students to really open up and see that the gap that they had can be an asset, or reframing that, right? Their experience, or drawing out what the positive things from that gap year and translating it into now a relevant career narrative that it's relatable to a current job, Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Even now as working, because this is a developing project that I got going, and the research is ongoing. It's not done. But I found out that there's always challenges for these type of students. Yolanda herself was scheduled to meet with me this past week. Her son was hospitalized. So that was something what resource is very valuable in this kind of work? Time. Time is just so valuable. It's the time to get them in, the time to talk to them, the time to do the work, the time to develop this narrative. Time is so precious.
Yes.
So I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges. And also because of the very time that they have a gap, it's almost like this sense of urgency. What's the quickest way to get to my degree? Quickest way to. So this is why finding a program. And I always tell students, and I hope my colleagues here agree, that if our college doesn't have a fit for them, and there's another college, it's in our best professional interest to refer that student to that program. Not necessarily because I want to keep them, I want them to succeed. I'm here for the student. So if there's a better fit that in this case, a full-time program versus coming to us for part-time, who am I to hold the student back?
Yes.
So those are the things, finding the fit, leveraging, beautiful thing like what we're doing here. And when we met the first time, I got a chance to see other colleges and what they're doing. So you become a resource.
Yes.
You need to refer students to others. That was
Yes.
one. The other thing is helping students and helping see it themselves, not necessarily me telling them, hey, you're here, but realizing like, if you got to my office, you have what it takes to keep going. So if you were not in my office, then I wouldn't have the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Yes.
And then from there, also connecting them to other resources, realizing that, hey, even though you took a gap, you can still qualify for the promise because you never went to college. Oh, even though you have the situations, we also have EOPS to help you with this other. Oh, you had some challenges with learning, we have the assess.
Yes.
You had challenges, some students don't know that there's a veteran center
Yes.
for many reasons. So helping the student realize that there's more that we can offer than just the conversation. And just to highlight some colleges, they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of dinero, they have a lot of money. So if there's a better opportunity for a student somewhere else, I mean, I'm happy to refer, and if they succeed over there, then their succeed becomes by definition my success.
Amen. Amen. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Ankit.
Well, that's great. I got an amen.
No, thank you. Thank you. And everyone, to all our panelists, thank you. Thank you again very much for the work that you've put into it. Thank you for, this serving your students and just overall, for being who you are, because you are a tremendous asset, yes, to your students. So thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on now to Amanda and Michael to kind of, highlight some things. And Amanda, one thing, and Michael, that comes to my mind here, we do have some K through 12 folks that are joining us. So if there's any comments or anything you want to share with regards to this program as how it might relate to K through 12, please feel free to do so. But yes, so I'm turning it over to Michael and Amanda.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, hearing all this, I'm like jotting down notes, and each of our panelists today have really just inspired. For those of you on, whether you work in community college or K through 12, the hope was that you're able to take this as a plug and play approach. Many of us are so busy in our roles, and many of us are wearing multiple hats. And so the reality is that when we have new curriculum or new tools or just new resources as a counselor, it's really hard to implement because we just don't have the time, right? So the idea is that, one, I want to remind you all that all of the individuals on this project, you can hear and see the passion in the work that they do, and they're all willing to share and collaborate and partner up if needed. So if you find that something could work at your, at your site, at your school, with a program, whatever it may be, please feel free to reach out because, I always say work smarter, not harder. It's so much easier to leverage what's already done and build off it than starting from scratch and trying to navigate yourself. So I just want to remind you all that, the idea is that we really want you to be able to take segments or pieces or approaches or best practices from all of our panelists today to really just implement it in the work that you all do. I had a list of things that I'm writing down and ways that I could incorporate it as different models, maybe with different populations or some with the same ones. So, just keep that in mind, because I always say, as a counselor, you don't want to have a bunch of nice cars in the garage that you don't drive. I want cars that I'm going to use. And so I consider the cars our resources as counselors.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that metaphor there, Amanda. I'm going to trade in my Tesla for a VW Bug. No. I don't have a Tesla. Okay, I'm Ubering it. Okay, so Michael.
I just am commend every single person on the call. This work is just so rewarding and so amazing. And we know proof of that because of the students' stories have transformed and students' lives have transformed. And it's just amazing to hear about all the work. And this was just a tip of the iceberg. I think the publication that Karen Miles is going to be working on will encapsulate a lot of the other voices that weren't heard today. And it's amazing. It really puts a huge smile on my face. And I think about our initial intent when kind of putting the grant together. And just to read a sentence from our initial grant was to utilize a culturally responsive framework that provides insight on ways to develop students' confidence and self-efficacy in the enrollment to career decision-making process. And the only way that this confidence and self-efficacy can be realized is through what each and every one of you are doing. And that's the one thing that hasn't been mentioned, but it's implied, and it's deep empathy, it's deep compassion, it's listening with an open mind and an open heart, and connecting with people. And when you connect with people, that's where they begin to believe in themselves and their story. And it's just, I'm so honored to work with all of you guys and continue to learn. And I cannot thank Aspire Consulting enough, and Stephanie's leadership behind this as well. It has really been tremendous. And I look forward to the chapters ahead that we're going to continue to co-create. So appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much.